In the entire history of the NBA, there's only ever been 25 players just below the height of 5'9". Tyrone Muggsy Bogues was not only one of these 25 players, but was the shortest player to ever make it to the NBA. He might have stood at just 5'3", but he was the type of guy that just never backed down. Someone that believed in what he could accomplish and went out there and got it done, night in and night out. Let's take a look at just how good 5'3" Muggsy Bogues really was. Tyrone was born in Baltimore, Maryland, where he grew up in the Lafayette Court housing projects. Both of his parents were shorter than average, with his father standing at just 5'5" inches tall. As a native of the 70s and 80s inner-city Baltimore, Bogues was raised by a single mother in a surrounding area that had been overrun with violence, drugs, and other gang-related activities. Muggsy found his refuge in basketball as a child, playing on the playgrounds of Baltimore. He was nicknamed Muggsy after a character from the Bowery Boys. It was in high school that Bogues really found his stride as a star on the legendary Dunbar High School team that also included future NBA players Reggie Lewis, Reggie Williams, and David Wingate. Their team was nicknamed the Poets and was led to an unbelievable 60-0 record in its final 2 seasons and was ranked number 1 in national rankings. Muggsy was the emotional anchor of the team, being childhood friends with Reggie Williams. To many people's surprise, Bogues would receive scholarships to play college basketball for several schools, such as Virginia, Penn State, and Seton Hall. Muggsy himself wanted to be a dental technician, but when he got the chance to continue playing, he grasped it with both hands. Bogues decided to go to Wake Forest, where over a 4-year campaign he would average 11.3 points, 8.4 assists, and 3.1 steals per game in his breakout junior year. He would follow that up with a stellar senior year when he averaged 14.8 points, 9.5 assists, and 3.8 rebounds while leading the ACC in steals and assists. By the time his college career ended, Muggsy became the ACC career leader in steals and assists, something that was unheard of from a 5'3" point guard. Bogues was drafted 12th overall in the 1987 NBA drafts by the Washington Bullets. It was a talent-laden draft class that also included legends like David Robinson, Reggie Miller, Scottie Pippen, and Kevin Johnson. At the time of his debut, Muggsy was 16.5 inches shorter than the average NBA player, something that is unheard of even today when the game has become much less physical and much more technical. Just look at how he compares to the second tallest player in NBA history, 7'7" Manute Bol, that is standing next to him. But don't let his height and physique fool you. Although he weighed in at just 140 pounds and stood at a height of 5'3", he had freakish athleticism to make up for it. The man had an insane vertical at 44.3 inches and could bench press a whopping 350 pounds, which was literally 2.5 times his weight. Let's not forget that many NBA legends described him as one of the quickest players in the league. Take a look at what Doc Rivers had to say about playing against Muggsy. The toughest part about playing against Muggsy is when he's behind me. I never know where he is. You can see the big guy out of the corner of your eye, but when Muggsy's behind me, there's no telling where he's coming from. This is exactly what made Muggsy so scary to play against. Despite starting in only 14 games in his rookie year, Bogues was still leading the Bullets in assists and steals, a precursor of what was to come. The following season, the Hornets would scoop up Bogues in an expansion draft that would ultimately lead to one of the best careers anyone has had in a Hornets jersey. It was a treat to see Muggsy being unleashed on the league as he terrorized defenses with his unmatchable speed and agility, while also being a pesky defender that would constantly reach into the cookie jar. His head-spinning passes would reaffirm the belief that beyond the shock value of seeing such a short player mess around with giants, Bogues was a legitimate threat that offenses had to plan for. Initially, the head coach, Dick Harter, preferred using Muggsy to provide short bursts of energy as a substitute player. But when he was fired the following season, Bogues began to flourish in higher tempo offenses where he would have the freedom to dictate the pace of the game on his own terms. The next 10 years would see Muggsy become one of the faces of the Hornets alongside Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson. Even though the Hornets were an expansion team, Bogues and his teammates made sure that everyone considered them a legitimate threat. During this time, Muggsy would lead his team to the playoffs 3 times. In 6 seasons between 1989 and 1995, he finished up 10 in the league for assists per game, only once finishing worse than 4th. In the 1992-93 season, Bogues had the best assist-to-turnover ratio in the entire league. The following season, Muggsy averaged a double-double, but his team finished just short of reaching the playoffs as the 9th seed in what was a stacked Eastern Conference. His 10.7 assists a game was second in the league, right behind the legendary John Stockton. In the 1994-95 season, it seemed as if things were finally coming into place as he set a career high with 10.8 points per game, with his team finishing in 4th place right behind the New York Knicks. The 50-win season reaffirmed Muggsy's position in the league as one of the most reliable and grittiest guards in the game. However, it all started crashing down, as Bogues had to undergo arthroscopic surgery on his left knee in August of 1995. This came after 6 straight years of increasingly stellar performances, and the NBA world knew that his decline was near. He did return a year later, but lost the quick first step that made him such a menace on the court. Regardless, he still finished the season missing just 17 games. The Charlotte Hornets were at a turning point in 1997. After years of playoff defeats and disappointments, Muggsy's recurring injuries didn't help, and soon he was replaced with point guard David Wesley. In November 1997, Bogues was traded to the Golden State Warriors in exchange for B.J. Armstrong. At the time, Bogues was still a franchise leader in steals and assists and was one of the best to protect the ball, which reflected in his assist-to-turnover ratio. The NBA world was distraught at seeing one of their favorite teams of the 90s breaking up like this. The only remaining member of the original Hornets was Del Curry, a close personal friend of Bogues. Muggsy wouldn't play much on the Golden State Warriors team due to hamstring and knee injuries, and so he was sent off to the Toronto Raptors, where he finished up his career. In his last years, you could still see what had made Bogues a good player in the first place. It was his determination not to be outdone by anyone regardless of size or stature that truly established him as a fan favorite during the 90s. Even when defending the great Michael Jordan, who everyone knew couldn't be stopped, Muggsy didn't let the challenge faze him and actually got him to turn the ball over. The myth of David and Goliath exists even in modern times because we humans always tend to root for the underdog. But Muggsy Bogues wasn't just an underdog, he was a ruthless player that had worked all his life to be where he was, and he wasn't going to let the notions of other people decide what his career would look like. Muggsy didn't do it for the story, he didn't do it for the acclaim and the applause of seeing a much shorter player play among the giants. He did it for himself and for his teammates. Because that's what Bogues represented, a do-or-die teammate that always had your back and could always be relied on for stepping up when it mattered. Growing up playing in Baltimore in the late 70s and early 80s surely added to that toughness both mentally and physically. Being from the inner city, he was always going up against high-quality competition and players that were easily 7 to 8 inches taller than him. So the NBA really wasn't a huge adjustment for him, even if the athleticism of the players went up. He shot decently from the floor and was one of the few guards that actually utilized the 3-ball, because he was always given so much more space than other point guards. You had to give him space, because if you stuck to him, it was likely that Muggsy's speed and agility would leave you searching for his dust. Once he hit the pros, he played 30 to 35 minutes a game every night for almost 6 years straight. From 1992 to 1995, he arguably had his best stretch when he averaged 8.8 assists during this time period and only had 1.8 turnovers per game. Basketball Reference currently ranks him as the 262nd best player of all time. He wasn't just a novelty, he was unique because he didn't let his size define him and had a heart bigger than everyone else on the court. What do you guys think made Muggsy special? Let us know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to click this next one on the screen. Go ahead and click it. It's free.